This is Frederick from Detroit, Berlin. We're going to have a look at the A-156, the Dual Quantizer from Doepfer. I have this module in my system for quite a while, and yeah, when I do melodic stuff, when I want to have some nice harmonically correct sequences, I use this module, and with these switches you see right here, you can switch between many positions, whether it be the full scale chromatically, the major or the minor scale, the major or the minor chords. And you can also have quints, and you can add a seventh and a sixth if you want to. It has two CV in and outputs, and it also has a transpose, which I was using on the matriarch. I transposed the signal so you can have a nice arpeggio going on. Let's quickly go over the patch. Matriarch, I'm not using any sounds on the matriarch, just using the matriarch to transpose the sequence going through the quantizer. One of the two patches is coming from the analog trigger sequence, randomly triggers some control voltages, and that passing through the dual quantizer. But what I'm also doing is running a clock sequence on the matriarch, and I'm clocking the dual quantizer to have it work in a sample and hold kind of fashion. So every time it gets a pulse, it holds the value until it gets the following pulse, and then it will hold the next value. So it will actually only sample the control voltage when this pulse is active. So when this clock pulsates, it will keep that voltage until the next pulse. It's actually, kind of a quantized sample and hold if you use that function, and I think it's a very nice function to have when you're using sequences and you're using pretty chaotic inputs for the control voltage, like an LFO or like a quick random voltage generator. The sequence, the random sequence, quantized by the dual quantizer, it will send the sequence to two VCOs, and then it will go back into the matriarch. The tides from mutable instruments, which is in oscillator mode, that's also going into the matriarch, and the sequence is actually generated by the complex envelope generator. I did a review on that one. It's one of my favorite modules, so please check that out. It's the mix out. It's a mix of all those AD envelopes, and yeah, that creates a pretty weird voltage going in every direction possible. It's not so random, it has like a cycle, but it's a pretty complex cycle, therefore hence the name complex envelope generator. But I like to use it because it has this continuous thing, and still it's pretty, it feels random, but it's not random. It's going into the quantizer because I want that quantized, and it's also triggered by the clock sequence from the matriarch. So they play together, and those are two different melodies entwining all the time. And then I transpose it with the matriarch. So it has that randomness that's really modular-ish, and it still has the musicality of the control you have over how you use the module and in which kind of modes you use the module. You can on the fly switch to minor mode, major mode, and all the different scales, chords, and everything that's in the module. So maybe let's get an overview of all the inputs and the outputs. So this is the module, the A-156, the Dual Quantizer module from Doepfer. If you look on the left, they're inputs, on the right, they're outputs, and 3 switches, so you have plenty of options switching between those 3-way switches. You got 3 of them, so those options, they extend quite a while, and I will directly go over them. So let's first look at the top. It's the control voltage in and output from the first section of the dual quantizer. You have the same at the second section. You got the control voltage in and output, and then just below the control voltage in and outputs, you got the trigger in and the trigger out. So the trigger in, what it does, I just explained it in the patch, but if you send a clock signal or some other kind of pulse signal to this trig input, every time it triggers, it will take a new sample of the incoming control voltage signal. So it will keep it steady like sample and hold. It sends this voltage through the control voltage output, and the trigger output is actually just a copy of the trigger input. So if you send trigger in that way, it will be available as a trigger out to send it to another device. Same goes for the quantizer 2. You have the quantizer 1 and an identical quantizer 2. The quantizer 2 has options, and via a jumper on the back you can select if that switchboard, I would say, will have some effect on both quantizers or only on quantizer 2. Here you got the switches. When the top switch is to the farmost left, it is in all mode. You have all 8 white keys and all 5 black keys. From your keyboard, from your scale, it plays all the notes chromatically. Then if you put it in the middle position, you have the major scale, so it will only play the white notes. And if you put it in the minor scale, it will play the scale, the same scale, but in minor. When we put it in major or in minor, this second switch will have also effect on how the module quantizes the control voltages coming in. So in the farmost left position of the middle switch, you have the scale mode, so then it plays a scale. So with the top switch in the middle position and the middle switch also in the middle position, you have the major scale, and you're in chord mode. And chord mode will actually mean if you're in the root of C, you will actually play the C, the E and the G. So it's a major chord. And if you put it in minor, it will play that minor chord instead. If you put it in the farmost right position, the middle switch, it will play a quint, so it will drop the middle note of that chord. So in major, or actually in minor, because that will be the same, because the minor is, the middle note makes it minor. If you drop that one semitone in a major chord, it will be a minor chord. So that doesn't have any effect when it's in quint mode. It will drop that middle note, so it will only play the C and the G. And let's go back to chord mode and major scale. So if you put the top 2 switches in the middle position, it will play a major chord, and it will play a regular major chord when the lowest switch is all to the left. You will add the 7th, so the 7th note of the root scale of C. It will play a B, If you add the 7th and if you add the 6th, it will add an A to that major chord. Same goes for the minor chord. And when you put it in quint, it will add that to the quint. So yeah, then you get the transpose control voltage in, and it will transpose both quantizers. So if you add a control voltage, it will transpose both control voltages. And that's, in my opinion, extremely handy, because yeah, it's an easy way to play around with the sequence you have going on. I have a patch going on, mutable instruments, tides, a little bit modulated by an LFO, the keyboard of the matriarch, the pitch going into the dual quantizer, then the pitch going out to the tides, and I'm using the tides because I don't want the keyboard of the matriarch controlling the oscillators in the matriarch, so I'm bypassing those oscillators. I'm only using the tides, and yeah, it kind of sounds like this. And this is of course the switches, the 3 switches all the way to the left, which means it's in all mode, even if you flip those bottom 2 switches. It will be just in all mode because they don't have any effect. Let's switch back, put it on major scale, and when I put it on major scale, so right now in all mode, I just played all the keys, the white keys and the black keys. So C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, etc. Now you hear that the sequence I just played, I played all the white and all the black keys. So I played the keyboard chromatically, and C, C sharp, but it's still a C because it's in major mode and so on. It will follow that scale and it will quantize the notes I'm playing to that scale. So when you input like the wrong control voltage for that scale, it will switch it to the nearest note in that scale. So in minor it goes more like this. If I play the first 3 major notes in the root of C in major mode, it will play the notes how I play them. When I put it in minor note and I play the same keys, it will actually take that E, will make it an E flat. Back to major mode, all the way to the left, this second switch. It's in scale mode, so it will play the full scale. If I switch it to chord, it will play actually the C, E and the G of that scale. So let me play it again chromatically. So that means C, C sharp, but it still plays a C. D still plays a C. D sharp still plays the C. And then it plays the E, because it's the note in the chord. The F will still be the corrected E. F sharp, still the E. And then it will play still the E, and I'm already in G. G sharp will play the G, because the keys don't correspond any longer to the corrected control voltages. A keyboard is sending the correct voltages, but the way this module actually inputs the control voltages, it will just look at the whole range and looks at it like in a continuous way, and it will just in a very technical way select those voltages so they don't correspond anymore to the keys of the keyboard. And that's not something bad, that's something weird maybe. It doesn't matter if it doesn't really correspond to the keyboard, like the input of the signal. The only important thing is the control voltage coming out of the dual quantizer, because mostly you will control it by knobs or by random voltages. So in that case it would be stupid to have a keyboard playing something and quantizing it, because actually the keyboard already quantizes the voltages to go to an oscillator. Therefore, I think it's most interesting to use a keyboard to transpose the sequence, which means if you put an arpeggiator on and you put it in major chord with a seventh, you can actually transpose that arpeggiated chord, and that's really nice. Otherwise it will always be stuck to the root. You can of course tune the oscillator to have like kind of a different root, and that's also a way, but I think that's a nice option to just transpose the dual quantizer. Let's go to the major quint, and I will still play it chromatically. So C, C sharp, still a C, G, still a C, D sharp, still a C, and then when I play the E, it will actually be a G, F will be a G, F sharp a G, G will be a G, G sharp will actually be a regular B, not a B flat. Sixth will be an A added to that chord, and if you continue up the scale it will just keep those notes that belong to the major chord with an added sixth or seventh note from the root. This sixth or this seventh note is actually the interval between the root note and the note it will add. So a normal major chord will be a 1, a third and a fifth. You're adding here a sixth, you're adding a seventh, and all the way to the left you're adding nothing. When you have this quint, it will be like the major quint. We'll go to the G. Actually at the F sharp it will make it a G. The dual quantizer is interpreting those voltages in a different way, but again it's not something to worry about. It's just how the quantizer works, and it's not really applicable to a normal way of use in a modular system, so don't worry about how it works. Let's add, so let's go over the quint. So it only has the C, the G and the C 1 octave higher. Let's add a seventh. I think, the dual quantizer, it's a very handy module to have in your system, and especially when you want to quantize stuff to make it really harmonically interesting, and when you want to create self-generative patches that yeah, you have many oscillators and you want, or if you have many voices and you want to make them work together without sounding totally dissonant all the time, then those dual quantizers are really interesting modules. They have two sections. If you buy more quantizers, yeah, that really adds up quickly. I think it's a pretty interesting and nice module to have in your system. I would like to thank you for watching. Please subscribe to this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you want to support the channel, please take a look at my Patreon page, which is linked in the description. Follow me on Patreon, become a Patreon and help me support all the videos I make. This would be a lot of help. I can really use that. I would like to wish you a nice day or nice evening and see you next time. Bye bye.